I will create a new project. I name MIT student application dinner and create. Okay, so this is a class that contains our application to manage MIT students. Before that, we will want to create a class named MIT student class. So you have a number of ways to do that. You can from here you can start to write your MIT student class from here, or you may want to do another way by store the class in a separate file by right click on here and choose add and then new item, and then choose class and you name this class MIT student and click add. So this is the MIT student class. Okay, so we start to write our class in here. So because a class may contain different components, data field, so I just take a note in here and we will work through all of them. Data field, property, constructor, and methods. So we work through all of them, right? So first, data field. Let's say we have three data fields for this class: int student ID, string student name, and string student course name. All of them are private. Okay, so that is how we create different data fields for the class. Now, declaring property. So what I normally do is to copy this one from here to here, and you add here public, because data field should be public, and then you change the name, the first letter of the data field, to uppercase. At the end, you put an open and close curly braces. Inside there, you will have get and set assessor. So what inside get assessor? What you want to do is to return the value from student ID. Inside the set assessor, you want to assign the value of student ID equal to value. So value here is a contextual keyword. It is carrying the value that you are attempting to assign to the student ID. So just write it like that. Similarly, for data field, for the property, for the data field student name, you will write public string student name. This one should be uppercase, an open and close curly brace. Inside there, you will have get assessor and set assessor. So in here, you have return student name statement, and in here, you will have student name equal value. Similarly with the course name. I also use this one, uppercase, and in here I also have get and set assessor. So for the get, I just return course name. But for the set, I want to set a condition, a constraint in here, so that the value of the course name only, the length only is smaller than 30 characters. So I will add an if statement in here. If value dot length smaller greater than 30, then I want to display a message saying that the length or course name is too long. Else if the length is smaller than 30, then what I need to do is to assign the value into course name, like that. So you see we have write 3 data field and 3 property for our program. Now let's see how we use this class in our application class. So in our application class, in the program class, in here I will create an object of the class MIT student that we have just declared, we have just created, and see how it goes. So I first create an MIT student object. So how we do that? We will write quite similar to how we declare a variable. So we start with the name of the class and then the name of the object. So in here I use student 1. So you notice that the name of the object should be lowercase. This is like how you use name for a variable. And then equal and then new, the name of the class again, and open and close bracket. So this student is created, but the value of the data field of the student is at the moment is just the default value. So if you want to display the value of the data field of the student, then and see what is the value in there. So we may write a write line statement. So I write student ID, student name, and then in here I will use student 1 dot student ID. So you see in here, when you say student 1 dot student ID, this is the property. So when you call this property, it will get the value stored in the data field student ID and return to you. So it will return you the value of the data field student ID in here. And then student 1 dot student name, and then student 1 dot course name. So if you run this program, you will not see the value. You will see the value of the student ID is empty, empty, and empty. This is 0? Sorry. So let's run and see it. So you see that student ID is 0, student name is empty, and the course name is also empty. Why? Because we haven't assigned the value for this data field, right? So if you want to assign the value for the data field, you may write like this. So student ID dot, you want to assign the value to the data field student ID. Then you will use the the property student ID in here. So you write student ID and you assign the value in here, for example 1, 2, 3, and then student ID as student 1, student name equal John, and then student 1 dot course name equal master of data analysis. So in this statement, what you have done, when you write student 1 dot student ID, you are calling the property student ID. You are calling the set accessor of the property. So what it does is to assign the value 1, 2, 3 into the data field student ID to the student ID to the student 1. And then after that, when you call student 1 dot student ID here, is actually you are calling the get accessor to take the value from the data field student ID out. So now if you run this program, you will see the value of the student ID, student name, and course name already assigned to the student. Next, let's see how we create constructor. So constructor is a name to create, it is a mean to create object. By default, C# provides the default constructor that we have used to create our object like this. But this constructor only assigns default value to data fields. We may want to write different constructors as different ways to create object. For example, in here, we will write two more constructors, one to create object with 3 parameters corresponding to 3 data fields, and the other one to create an object with 2 parameters. So let's see how we write it. In here, to write the constructor, we write like this. The access modifier should be public, and next with the name of the constructor is similar to the name, exactly the name of the class. You may want to copy or make sure that you use correct name. So in here, I will create a constructor with constructors with 3 parameters corresponding to 3 data fields. So in here I have int ID, string name, and string course. So there are 3 parameters like that. Inside the body of the constructor, I want to assign student ID equal the value of the ID passing into this constructor, and student name equal name, and course name equal the value of the parameter course in here. So that is the first constructor. The second constructor just only receive 2 parameters only. So I will write like this. So maybe I just use 2 parameters, ID and name, and I just assign the value of ID to the student ID and name to the student name. For the course name, I want to assign the default value for it. For example, I want to assign the value matter of ID, for example, like that. Matter of data analysis, something like that. Okay, so I created 2 constructors. Now let's come to the program class and use them. So when you come to here, you see an arrow in here. It says MIT student doesn't contain a constructor that takes 0 arguments. Why is that? Because if you don't write any new constructor, C# will create a default constructor for you. But if you create some constructor like this, so the default constructor is overridden. So make sure that in case you write a new constructor, you have to rewrite the default constructor as well. So to write that default constructor, very simple. Just write like that, no parameter and no statement in the constructor body, like this. So this basically will not do anything, will not assign any value to the data field. So now you don't have any arrow anymore. Now let's use constructors to create objects. So I will use 2 constructors to create 2 objects. So you will write like this. Student2 equal new MIT student. This time I will use the constructor with 3 parameters. So I will pass in here 111. The name is Lisa, and the class name is master of computer science, for example, like that. Okay, so if you run this example, you will see on the screen is create a student ID, a student object, student2 for you. And if you want to display the value of the data field of the student2, you will write a statement similar like this. But you change this one into student2, student2, and student2 in here. Okay, so that is the that you create student2 using a constructor with 3 parameters. Let's say I create another student object, student3, and this time I use the constructor with 2 parameters only. So in here I use I pass the value 222, and the name of the student is line. So because it just have 2 parameters, therefore I just have to pass 2 values in there. And this time, if you want to display the value of the student number 3 here, you will write the statement similar to here. Okay, so if in here I run this example, you will see the information of the student 1 and student 2. So student 2 is 111 and name is Lisa, and the course name is Master of Computer Science. If you want to display the value of the data field in the student 3 as well, so you change this one into number 3, and number 3. So in here I may want student 1 ID is, student 2 ID is, and student 3 ID is. Let's see. So you see student 1 ID is like that, student 2 is like that, student 3. So for the student 3, even though you only pass the value of the student ID and the student name line, you don't pass the value of the course name, but it will receive the default value that you already set in here, which is Master of Data Analysis. That is why the value of the course name is Master of Data Analysis. So that's different ways to create objects using different constructors. Next, let's see how we create method inside the class. So let's say we want to create a method to display the information of the object. So I will write public display information. So this method will not receive any parameter and will not return anything. So inside the method, what I want to do is to display the information of the object. To display student ID, so in here I write student ID is 0, and in here should be student ID. Maybe I will write in one statement only. Student ID is, student name is, and course name is. I will write on one sentence, one statement. So this one is student ID. I remove this. Student name and course name. So you will notice here, you can use course name course. So you can use course name or course name. You see, there are two ways to use. So if you decide to use this one, it means that you are using data field. If you decide to use this one, it means that you are using you are using properties. Inside the class, property or data field is like quite similar, because inside the class, even though the data field is private, but it is asset. It can be asset inside the same class. So in here you can use data field or data field or property. It's all okay. For example, I use data properties in here. So that is how you write the class. You write the method display information. So in the main method, you will use this. Method. How to use that? So in here, let's say I want to display the information of the student 1. What I need to do is I write student 1 dot display information. That's all. And then this will help me to display the information of the student 1. I don't need to write this this statement anymore. And similarly, if I want to display the information of student 2 and student 3, I just call this information this method vr the name of the object, and I don't need this statement anymore. So what it does is that when you write student 1 dot display information, this will call the method display information applied to the student 1. So in here, what the student ID here will be of the student 1. What the student name here will be of the student 1, and what the course name here will be of the student 1, and so on. So if we run this program, you will see the same the results showing on the screen will be like this. Okay, so if you want, you can write like one more statement, write line. For example, student 1 information, like that, and similarly in here you write student 2 information, and in here you write student 3 information. So if you run this again, you will see student 1 information, student 2, and student 3. So now you see how to use method, non-static method in the C# program. Okay, so that is an example that I have used I have created different components for a class. You can rewrite this example and see and rewrite and run them, and change the code so that you can understand the concept in here.